Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We've got two sections to this part of the plenary session. The first is looking at strategic futures. It's also a chance, if you've got any burning questions that you'd like to ask in the audience, if you go to your conference app, then there's a section in there, you're in the main auditorium, and you can send a question through to the iPad. So please, if you've got anything you'd like to ask, do that. We've got four speakers in this session, so we're going to crack straight on. First up, I'm going to invite Simon Arnold, Chair of the Strategic Futures Advisory Committee, to speak, who's also a non-exec director of TSA. So Simon.
Thanks, Tanny.
Should we give Simon a bit it's a long walk over there.
It's the long walk. Right, thanks, Tanny. Good afternoon, everybody. So I guess 18 months ago, the TSA board identified the need to lift our heads, prepare for the future, think about what's coming down the pipes. We recognise that technology has completely transformed our lives over the last 10 years. And the expectations of consumers have started to shift markedly as well in terms of supporting day-to-day health, well-being and care needs. But when we really challenged ourselves, we could also see that over that same decade, really very little in technology-enabled care had fundamentally changed. We do magnificent work, we provide magnificent services, but probably being a bit harsh on us all as a nation, we've kind of been sleepwalking our way into a bit of a less certain future as everything around us has been changing. So we could see a major risk for the sector that it could become marginalised in its current form unless we really transform and redefine technology-enabled care in a way that is meaningful to people and is practical. Those seeking services, they get support they need to make their lives better and easier, either for themselves or for those they care for. You've heard this morning from Roy a little bit about the mission-centric approach that we're taking to the future and the need to raise our sights and focus on ambitious long-term objectives. So as we went through our governance refresh as a board, we introduced a group to scan the horizons and think about that longer-term perspective, 10 or plus years out. And we created a committee, pithily named the Strategic Futures Advisory Committee, as you heard from Roy, or SFAC, to help the board do that. And our focus really rests on identifying and responding to strategic risks and opportunities over that 10-year horizon for TSA and the sector, and to advise the board accordingly. And I'll use that word notedly, so it's an advisory committee. It's not about developing the strategy. It meets 4 times a year, and it brings together a whole group of diverse experiences and outlooks to challenge ourselves and help the board make plans for the future. So SFAC members, and some of whom are joining me here, bring expertise covering technology-enabled care, housing, social care, health, lived experience and consumer needs, consumer smart home technology, consumer lifestyle, and academia, all with a focus on supporting independent living. And that group has really enabled the TSA and the board to think differently, challenge ourselves in a different way, and look ahead in a much more meaningful manner. So since we held our first meeting last July, we've spent time considering those emerging societal and sector trends, those things which will really shape the future for care provision and technology-enabled care more specifically, and identify some of the risks and the opportunities that, in our view on the committee, we need to consider in terms of shaping that future environment. So I'd like to take the opportunity really just to share some of the key messages that we've been, if I can get that to work, there we go, that we found and shared with the board. So I guess it won't surprise anybody in the room when we say that the current health and social care system is not sustainable into the future in terms of technology-enabled care, and funding support also won't be able to provide the level of need, meet the level of need for an ever-increasing older and vulnerable population. We're facing a demographic change, the like of which we've not seen before, and the Minister talked about that this morning. We've got more people to look after of all age groups, and we'll have fewer people to look after them. Estimates recently have been that there'll be hundreds of thousands of additional care workers required in the sector unless something changes. So we need fundamental change across the sector to reduce that inequality gap. And actually, fundamentally, it's technology that is going to have to really blaze the way to enable that to happen. Now, crucially in that, patient or consumer power and demands are growing significantly at the same time. And that's going to change and shape the future of what's acceptable. The system will need to adjust to cope with those growing expectations, the availability of health data, consumer-related health data, which is often sat on our wrists, on our bodies, and that we're using every day to help track our health and well-being. Not only this, but the current system as well doesn't have the capacity. As we've heard this morning, it doesn't have the capability or, to a degree, the willingness to be able to embrace that technological change that's going to be required. So with that in mind, there are three key areas of risk or opportunity. So building on that previous point, power of consumer is going to be fundamental. So interoperability of what we consider as consumer technology and technology-enabled care technology, as we define it today, is going to be really fundamental for patients and consumers alike. The focus is going to be on services that the technology enables, and not on the technology itself. In fact, people won't be differentiating between different types of technology. It's just things that will help them to live the life that they need to. New entrants will start to emerge, and that's already starting to happen. Those organizations which have access to significant data sets, for example, smart home providers, home security providers, how to enable multiple parties to work together in a mini ecosystem as part of an integrated service for individuals and families, whether that be preventive, proactive, or reactive. So families are going to be seeking simple, effective, self-pay options that will become an inescapable reality for us that we need to respond to. And not only that, but again, as was mentioned this morning, the housing environment is going to be really critical. The need to adapt housing to technology needs and trends that support the care needs of the population, particularly as that level of need increases. Then we have the system, which will experience major change as well. There's going to be a move towards more proactive and preventive care, enhanced via data, and more community-based services to provide active support in the home. People are going to be actively managing their own health and care needs as we go forward, and that's going to result in that creation of more sophisticated support networks, the need to be able to bring multiple providers together, enabled and supported by technology, making integration an unavoidable reality for the future. And then the third of those risks is around capability, and we've talked about that quite a bit today. There'll be a need for standards, for accreditation and regulation, and the ability to manage integration and delivery risk in particular, how to ensure safety, critical services are reliable and responsive at the point of need when integrated with other wider wellbeing service delivery. We'll have data stratification, analytics, and of course, I can't probably stand up here without mentioning the term AI. That's all going to evolve to enable more targeted, more personalized services and intelligent commissioning along the way within the healthcare environment, as well as making preventive and proactive monitoring and intervention in the home much more possible. The workforce will also need to adapt its skills. So we talked about that this morning, to ensure that our workforce out in the market is technology savvy, is also data savvy and ready to be able to leverage the technology, interpret trends and data in order to start to take the right actions at the right point in time. And in itself, if we get the technology right, it will release time, it will release capacity for the sector to do more with the scarce resources it has. So lots of change, and that might seem like a bit of a concern, but actually that's a huge opportunity. There's a massive ambition for technology in the future within the health and care setting, and supporting those needing care to really operate within a regulatory and standards framework which works for us and will need to be considered, as we heard from the Minister today, and getting that right is going to be very important. It's important to note, the technology really has the ability to enable and support care for young and old, and it's going to be fundamental to make that care system work in the future. We've also identified for ourselves that within this future context, the role of the TSA and all of us as members will need to be well defined. How do we stay relevant within a world that is changing so rapidly every year, in some cases even over the course of months and weeks? And how do we manage to apply ourselves in an interoperable manner? And that's a question we've posed to TSA and forms a foundation really of the strategy that Alison's been talking about that we need to grapple with. So what does that mean for us as a sector? I guess it's all about how we adapt to the future. It's about challenging our own business models and making sure that we're prepared for the opportunity that's out there and we grab hold of that. And I guess without being overly dramatic, I'd probably call this our Kodak moment as a sector about what are we going to be in the future and how are we going to lift our heads. We can't ignore the change that's coming, that's being demanded by people. We need to decide on the direction we want to take, as a sector, as TSA, and also as individual organisations. So it's about how we be positive, how we raise our sights and look ahead, how we understand that opportunity and make the decisions that are really going to count to ensure that we're still, as a sector, very much at the centre of technology-enabled care transformation in 10 years' time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. Our next speaker is Dr. Clenton Farquharson, CBE. I've been in Birmingham less than 24 hours, and so many people have already quoted Clenton's words to me about how disabled people should be able to live. So I'm really excited about listening to Clenton talk about your lived experience. Thank you.
Thank you. To build on what Simon's just talked about, I'd like to, if you will, imagine a future isn't somewhere we simply arrive. It's something we build together with purpose and compassion, ensuring every voice is heard and every person is supported. And in care and support sector, we are not just responding to needs. We are actively shaping a future where innovation and humanity converge to create well-being for all. This future is not one where people are passive recipients of care and support. It is one where belonging, exchange, and connection from the foundation of a thriving and supportive community where everyone, whether drawing on care and support or providing it, play a vital role. Every interaction strengthens the system, ensuring that no one is left behind. It's a future where we are all empowered to live well, with meaning, and at the heart of this vision is interdependency. And what that basically means is we're all connected. Our health and well-being are intrinsically tied to those around us. And the people who draw on care and support are integral to the vitality of society. They are not separate, they are part of the whole. And two, shared responsibility. Care and support should not be viewed as a burden, but as a collective effort and shared responsibility that enhances human connection and fosters belonging. It's about creating conditions for everyone to live well, with meaning and supported by a network of care and support. And third, for me, is about innovating together. True innovation in care and support isn't just about technology. It's about weaving human connections into the fabric of every solution we create. It's about ensuring that living well with meaning is accessible to all, no matter their circumstances. Technology plays an important role in this vision. It acts as the infrastructure that supports and connects every part of the system, enabling a seamless flow of care and support. But the key challenge and opportunity ahead is ensuring that technology does not replace human connection. Instead, it should amplify it, make care and support more personalised, efficient, accessible, all while ensuring that people can continue to live well with meaning. And for example, assistive technology such as AI-powered robots, smart home devices that can support individuals to maintain independence while remaining an integral part of connected care and support ecosystem. And these innovations help and deliver care and support when it's needed most, but always guided by human oversight, ensuring dignity and respect and compassion remain at that forefront, empowering individuals to live well with meaning in their own home. And we must shift the narrative about care and support. It is not something that happens in isolation, but a part of the interconnection and fabric of our homes and communities and society. So technology enables this system to function, but it also has that human element that of carers, families, and those drawing on care that make it work. So the home is more than just a physical space. It becomes a hub and for connections and mutual care and support that thrives. It is where collective efforts meet and ensure that individual needs are met with understanding, compassion, and allowing everyone to live well with meaning. And in this future, we are building an ecosystem where interdependence, well-being, innovation, and belonging converge. And that technology must be the tool that enhances care, not the end goal. So in connecting people to services, it empowers individuals to make informed decisions and ensure timely care and support. But as always, rooted in human connections, guided by that ethical framework that ensures the person's needs and dignity are central. So together, we are creating a future where everyone has a place to grow, supported by a network that nourishes well-being and fosters meaningful exchange and strengthens our communities in which we all belong, and allowing us all to live well with meaning. And that's the future that we should build together. Thank you.
Clanton, I always love hearing you talk because it just makes me feel really empowered. And I think what you're saying about, tech being an amplification of human connection is really important. And also when you talk about belonging and living well with meaning, which is a really important reminder of why we're here. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is Dr. Lynn Corner, Director of Voice and Deputy Director of UK's National Innovation Centre for Ageing.
Well, I would just want to say thank you to Simon and Glenda because, I was going to say a lot of those key points, and I think it's fantastic that we have such agreement. We are the National Innovation Centre for Ageing. We're here to innovate, and we're here to build on people's lived experience. And so our voice network that is embedded within it is absolutely crucial to so much of the discussions of this event in terms of really listening to people's needs, really anticipating people's needs so that we are innovating, building building fantastic tech based on people's real needs and priorities, and how we can together identify the gaps and then look to science, to technology, in innovation to really meet those amazing gaps. And as I look to the future, we have many, many challenges, but I think we've also got reason to be extremely hopeful and optimistic, because there is so much fantastic science, tech, and wonderful businesses out there bringing it forward. But I think it's a really pivotal point at the moment in terms of how we've really got to, before we go forward, think, have we got the infrastructure to really enable all of this fantastic technology to happen? First point, I guess, in terms of looking for future trends is that we are living with a system that has evolved. It's not fit for purpose going forward for a society where many, many more people need to be enabled by technology. So we've got to really think through how we manage that and get rid of this and social care as if it's an add-on. As Clinton said, it's absolutely fundamental to who we are as a society that we empower all people to live their best possible life. And so that's something that we've really got to completely reimagine. Increasingly as well, we're seeing technology come through which is about innovating not just for function, but for fun, and actually making sure that the innovations that we have to help people, especially in later life, they can really tap into emotion. They can help people to, for example, for people with dementia, recall conversations and memories to provide that really meaningful interaction. So even with great frailty, even at the end of life, it's possible for technology not just to enable care, but to really enable the best possible quality of life and well-being. This, of course, although we're in the UK, a major trend is that this is a global issue. We have the chapters in 10 different countries now. We're always scouting the world for new innovation, new smart technology that we can bring through. And I think a real trend is going to be how we can really imagine, how we can look at different kind of countries and how we can bring forward smart tech rapidly into the UK so that we can all benefit from that. Equally, when we have a fantastic innovation, how can we actually, scale that to other countries? So we're not just looking within a UK context. The future really is global, and how we can really share ideas, exchange great ideas is going to be something that I think is testament to the success of the future. We know already that so much amazing technology is already out there. As Simon said, we've had it for decades. We've been able to look at how we can detect skin cancer. We've been able to look at technology-enabled care in terms of the health prevention space with wearables to be able to allow remote diagnostic and so on. But we're back again to, we need to address many fundamentals in terms of how do we pay for this? What is the business model for prevention? And what is the business model for this care? And how do we actually really tackle data interoperability and data privacy head on? And these are big issues for the future. But I think if we can be brave, if we can work collaboratively with business, with government around regulation, to really put in that innovation framework, that's when I think that the future is very, very positive in terms of what we can enable in terms of technology-enabled care. So that fundamental back to the lived experience. As Clinton said, we have got to ground everything that we do in real needs, real experiences, real people's real aspirations and priorities. And I think if we do that, if we can work together in collaboration, that's when we can really empower all of this tech-enabled care to really make that massive difference. I think it's, a cliche, but we are better together. And the more we can look at kind of a service approach, as Simon said, an ecosystem, looking at how we can concierge this around that person's individual, personalized needs, that's when I think that we can really power all of that amazing tech and really help people to live life at the full, regardless of what disability or what their fundamental needs are.
Thank you. Thank you. We keep coming back to people and also real people, which is a really important theme. Our final speaker in this first part of the session is Quillan Hurley, Managing Director of Life Sciences for Cooperative Group.
Hi. So let me just explain what the Life Services division is of the Cooperative Group to start with. The Life Services division supports people through really key life events. So we have a funeral business, a funeral planning business. We have a legal business which specialises in probate and estate planning, serious injury and family matters. And we have an insurance business which deals with life insurance and other critical insurances. So we're building a business to support people through the life event that they have to deal with and support them in planning for those life events. It's a £500 million business, and then we obviously have our food business, which is an £11 billion business. And why that's relevant is it's a member-owned business, so it's a different type of business. We are there and owned by our members, and everything we do is for our members. All of our profits go back into member pricing and go back into the communities in which they live. At the moment, we have 6.5 million members, and if we continue at our current trajectory, we will get to an 8 million membership very, very soon. And that's against the backdrop of the macro view that we're looking at as a cooperative, which is a significant growing population expected to get to 70 million very soon in the UK and beyond, very, very fast. We're looking at a growing ageing population of 65 plus. We're looking at ongoing migration and changing family structures. We see a lot of growth in emerging single-family households. So when you take those trends and you look at the cooperative and its membership, and then we speak to our members and we ask them what do they want from us? What do they want from their own organisation in the next 5 to 10 years? Two of the things that come up again and again are an improved support and focus on well-being. They want their cooperative to support them with their well-being choices and to support with care needs. That comes up again and again, whether it's for themselves as members or whether it's for the member to care for someone within their family, within their community. So these are two huge themes that we're seeing coming through, and we are working very hard with partners in the technology-enabled space to identify where can we as a cooperative meaningfully support in that space. What we see in our core businesses of Life Services and indeed the food businesses, and these are the trends that we think are clearly going to play into well-being and play into care. We see absolute and utter insistence on omni-channel experiences. People want to be able to switch from digital to telephone into a branch, back to telephone, back into a branch. They want to be able to move seamlessly between the channels. That actually sounds very easy, but it's much harder to put into practice than you might like to think. But that's something that we are absolutely and utterly dedicated to. And we see a real opportunity with data because our members want us to use data for their benefit. Well, the more we can identify them and the more we understand their purchasing, their preferences, their conversion, the more we can actually lean in and provide personalised, tailored and the right channel experience for them. So that seamless omni-channel is incredibly important. Digital delivery and tech enablement more generally, that's something that we are absolutely and utterly seeing the consumers want. It's definitely an emerging need. And we're absolutely and utterly in a position to provide it. Again, from AI has been mentioned a few times. We have been studying AI very carefully to look at where we can put it in service of our members to give them a much better experience. Within the legal business, it's quite staggering. We spent 3 months last year building an AI agent that can interpret a will, look at an estate, and produce a preliminary case plan for the lawyer. What typically would have taken a lawyer 3 hours now takes an unbelievable 29 seconds flat with the AI. That is obviously, we see the AI as a trainee solicitor. It then goes to a qualified, highly experienced lawyer who checks the work of the AI. But that just shows you the level of augmentation and technology-enabled delivery that can happen in areas like law. We're also investigating areas in other parts of our business where we believe AI will be transformational. And obviously that then brings the cost of the consumer down, it brings the price to get things done at the front line down, brings the speed. We absolutely and utterly see AI in our legal and funeral business as revolutionary as Excel was, for example, in the finance world. It's just taken a little bit longer for the Excel for lawyers to catch up. So we can see that our clients are demanding this. We know they're using AI all the time. So our lawyers need to be able to use it and use it to the benefit of their consumers. The other trend that we see, because we speak to our members on an ongoing basis, we're constantly running sessions with them, sustainability and transparency are two huge themes that are coming through. They want everything that we put in front of them to be done sustainably and done in a transparent way. So we're clear about where their data is played into supporting a service that they've got. We're clear about where personalization has involved use of their personal data. They're absolutely and utterly sustainability and transparency are major underpins of our business for the future. And then we have diversification. Well, we know our society is getting more and more diverse. Our everything, whether it's wishes expressed in wills, everything from our legal business through our insurance business and into our funeral business, we are getting more and more requests for specific, tailored, personalized and diverse experiences. And then finally for us, I think as a member organization, one of the things that we really, really see is a mindset shift. We are getting asked all the time by our members, when will you go into this adjacent area of care? When will you take your life services business and expand it out? We see a real mindset shift around people looking to us to provide solutions and almost a throwback to the pioneering days of before. And I think if I had £1 for every time I've been asked, but social care and care is one of the biggest issues of this generation. What is the co-op doing about it? You stepped into food in 1884 or 1844. I have to point out, well, I haven't been around that long, but I'll go back and look it up. So we absolutely and utterly are being asked consistently to step in because care is regarded as probably the biggest societal issue. Our members want us to lean in and do something about it for them and for their communities.
Thank you very much. I'm fascinated by AI and just, it's almost like we can't quite imagine how much it's going to change our lives. So you talked about what took 3 hours, is now 29 seconds. Do you think you're close to understanding the huge impact that it's going to have in terms of freeing up people's time and doing things in a very different way? Yes, we have a full-scale roadmap for AI adoption from now until we think we will have exhausted all of the AI opportunities by about mid-2026. And we believe that we will have run it through all of the production processes of our business, all of the conversational structures with our clients. We believe we will have threaded it through the entirety of our business because we see it. People say artificial intelligence. I honestly, and people talk about, well, AI hallucinates, but people hallucinate. I think it's just augmented intelligence. It really is. As long as we treat it at that, it's not perfect. It'll never be perfect, but neither are people. But as long as you've systems to check and make sure that you've built it to augment people. As I say, to me, it's just what Excel spreadsheets were to finance 50 years ago. I do love an Excel spreadsheet. I've got a question from the audience from Stephen Benz, and it's to Clinton, in terms of how can we ensure technology supports and uplifts people without replacing the human touch? And, there's kind of push towards remote digital care. how can we ensure that doesn't isolate people as much as technology allows us to connect to people? Sorry, big question there.
Yeah, it's a very good question. We can achieve this by balancing the priorities of the needs and voices of those who draw on care and support, and ensuring that technology serves as a tool to enhance and not replace that human interaction. And for me, there's three things that we need to keep in mind at a forefront. And it's a bit like you talked about a fixed mindset. It's moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And I think one is focus on people. We need to integrate systems that are designed around people with their needs and preferences and aspirations that connect to it, enabling them to live well with meaning. Two is about enhanced connections. We need to foster relationships using technology to make care and support more timely, accessible, personalised, so that everyone can live well with meaning. And the third element for me would be about, it has to be rooted in compassion at the core, and making care and support must remain a shared responsibility that thrives on empathy and compassion and connection. Those values that no technology can replicate, I don't believe. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you. Lynn, you talked, excuse me, talked about future trends and, you know, what is out there. And there's a huge amount of tech out there that can make a difference. But how do we get it to the people who it will make a difference to? You know, sometimes from the outside, so I sort of sit slightly on the outside of the sector, and it can feel like quite complicated if you're not in it. And then when I talk to individuals, it all starts making sense and it all kind of seems quite easy. But it's getting to the individual. That's the bit that... do you think there's the right connection there to make the difference, or is there more that we all need to do to make sure there's better connections?
I think there's more that we can do. I mean, I think, you know, we've discussed kind of on the panel today in terms of the need for kind of transparency, for greater accessibility. Quite a lot of the time, from a person's point of view, you don't know where to start. You're often, as the market opens up, one of the risks is that people actually are kind of quite intimidated by all of, you know, the tech that's out there. So it's a fantastic thing, can actually feel really, really quite daunting. So I think the more that we, as we've said, be transparent about how the tech is used, where the data is, get that interoperability and make it as easy as possible for people to navigate to the great care, I think is going to be key for that success. And then also to be really ambitious from listening to carers, to people who have got that lived experience, where their gaps are. Because it's not just about providing the tech, it's about being brave about designing, co-designing with people, tech that is going to meet those future needs, so that we don't get stuck in a bit of a rut of just providing what we always think we need, but really using AI, being close to where needs are changing, where you know, people are evolving, so that we can really embrace people's difference, people's personalised circumstances, and ensure that they can, you know, find the right tech for them at that moment in time.
Yeah. And it's finding the tech that works as well. It just makes me think, I remember trying to buy my father a smartphone and saying to him, well, you can email me whenever you want. And he was like, why do I want to do that? It's like, oh, great, thanks for that. But, yeah. But it's got to be user sort of friendly, doesn't it? And actually make that difference. Simon, I'm going to leave you with a final question. And sort of given the obvious changes and challenges in the market, what will the key be to making organisations successful in the future? That is another really big question. If you can answer it in 2 minutes, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll give it a go. I guess in some ways it's fairly simple, albeit complicated to achieve. I mean, the first thing is listen. So listen and challenge. Clinton's talked about focusing on people. What is it that people need? What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? how do we set ourselves up to be able to provide the services that work for them, and where's the role for technology within it? So I think that's the first thing. The second is around collaborating. So, I think it's thinking more broadly than we think today. It's thinking beyond the narrow definitions that we have. It's about opening ourselves up to say, actually, how do we create those services that can come together for a person, and the technology just enables that as opposed to being an end in itself. And I think that's going to be really important. The players and the organizations which succeed are going to be those that collaborate effectively. And I think the last thing is to look up, to keep looking ahead, what's happening. Things are changing so quickly that without keeping that lens on what's the future looking like 5, 10 plus years time, then we're going to find that you'll get 5 years down the line and think, well, why didn't we think of that 5 years ago? And not being constrained by the fact that actually, you've got a 3 to 5 year planning horizon, but actually you've got a world and population that works in a longer term than that.
So it just made me think of something. You talk about stories, and so I worked on Paralympic bid for 2012, and we were trying to save some money. And in 2009, someone suggested not having Wi-Fi anywhere in the village or in Olympic Park. And people going, yeah, do you know what? Do we really need one? And can you imagine, even a couple of years on, if Usain Bolt hadn't been able to tweet pictures of himself in the village, it would have been. So I think there's something in knowing where you are now as well to figure out what that path is. Thank you so much to the panel. Could you please join me in saying thank you very much? So thank you to Simon, to Clinton, to Lynn, and to Quillan. And now the second part of our session this afternoon is we're going to be looking at shifting the conversation from using AI to making AI useful. I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Diane Gitchew, co-chair of Canadian AI Council, AI expert and lecturer.
Great, thank you very much, Tanya. All right. Okay, so I'm not going to read all that to you, but in summary, I've been doing machine learning AI for a long time, and most recently with a lot of what's come out of AI and what's continuing to evolve with this technology. I'm now spending a lot of time advising organizations and government on how to embrace innovation responsibly. So I'm going to start off with a bit of a history lesson, and the message here is AI is not new. We've been working with different neural networks, and when I say we, I don't mean me. I wasn't working in the 50s, but the first neural networks were born in the 1950s. And you see a bit of a hype curve where there just wasn't the investment in data yet. There wasn't the technology and the compute power to leverage that, but the concept was there, the algorithms, the math was there. You notice in the 80s, another upswing, and that's when I started my career, and you would have heard about expert systems, decision support systems. These were all different types of machine learning where we were looking at data to be able to answer questions. And this entire continuum, that's what the push has been. How can we get information into the hands of people needing to make decisions in a way that they can absorb it? So you see the hype curve go down again. In the 1980s, my background was epidemiology, and we used to have to put a note on our computers for the janitor not to shut off our computers because these systems, these compute power just wasn't there. It took days to process the information we needed. We were running very similar models during SARS and H1N1 that we ran during COVID, and the difference was night and day. The upswing that you see in the 2000s is the introduction of cloud. And it was the ability to integrate data more easily, as well as the investment that we've all been making in operational data for so long has really increased our ability in combination with compute. So even before the AI's iPhone moment in 2021, 2022, AI was already, traditional AI models were already really taking the upswing. So why is it so important now? It's not that the technology is new. It's not that we weren't embracing it in decision making, But it's really two things. One is the fact that we can now do things that were really expensive and complicated. Modeling documents and narrative text. Think of your clinical notes. Were really hard to be able to parse. The other is images. We were doing some deep learning, particularly in diagnostic imaging, but again, we just were not able to do it in the same way. But the real reason why it has taken off now is accessibility. It's the fact that we've accomplished what we started back here, is we've found a way to get the information in the hands of decision makers without having to pull data scientists out of the basement to try to explain what it was they were seeing and explain the math. And that's why it's really taken off. So in my background, I'm very much a humanist. I believe fully that technology is here to help us. I don't believe in AI for the sake of AI, but I do believe that we have an opportunity here to do things that were really challenging before. If we look at this in a different way, the types of AI that we've been using for decades, probably everyone in the room has tried out some kind of chatbot, whether it's on Best Buy, Amazon, trying to find information. And even in healthcare, we were doing very early chatbots. Certainly during COVID in Canada, we had a bot that was helping make sense of all that information that was constantly changing, the policy direction, what was open, what wasn't open, what's the mask mandate today. And across our government websites, we put a single bot which became our voice of reason to the public. But it had an interesting side effect that it also was amazing information back to the clinical teams on what it was the public wanted to know. And this has evolved. We've taken that bot in Western Canada, and BC Cancer now uses it as a tool to help patients navigate the very complicated world of oncology, understanding what their diagnoses are, understanding what the treatment protocols are, understanding the different clinical trials, and helping families and citizens navigate something really complex, which evolved. So now we add to it the ability to take all of this information that's also in policy guidelines and documents and research papers and also ingest that. And again, it's really advanced what we were already starting to do. So how can we embrace AI to do a lot of the things you've heard about today? And I love the analogy of information as water. You can turn on your drinking tap and you know, without having to know all the ins and outs of where the water came from, some people may know, how it's been curated, how it's been treated, you know that when you turn on that tap, that water is trustworthy. And in order to fully embrace AI to be able to answer our questions, to provide information to citizens, to provide automation for tasks which are complex and costly to do manually, this is really where we need to get to. And we're noticing in the UK and Canada, the EU AI Act, all organizations I've been working with are looking for how can we foster innovation with guardrails? How can we set up the guardrails so we know the realm within we can work, but not staunch the innovation to be able to do more? And to me, this analogy is where we need to get to. For decision makers to embrace AI, particularly in clinical, where it's so important that we get that information right, we need to be able to trust the information. And this part of our session is about the future, and that's what I was going to talk a little bit about today, is how all of these technology innovators are beginning to build out solutions which are getting us closer to this. So one thing we need to do, is anyone in the room, put up your hand if you've not ever played with any of these generative AI tools. Has anyone not played with them? Okay, I asked that question 6 months ago, and I would say a quarter of the room had put their hands up. So everybody's starting to play with these technologies and getting familiar with them, and they're fun. You can do a lot with them. You can have it everything from greeting you in the morning, give me a plan for my exercise or my diet, or ask it quick questions. It's like Googling times 1,000. But it's still not at the point that we're able to just trust it, because all of the principles you heard in that last session, transparency, explainability, reliability, privacy, need to be built into these models. But if you consider this as a tool, Forget that it is AI for the sake of AI and use it for the capabilities. That's where we're starting to see some real advancements in what we're able to do. So to break it down, what we're looking at is neural networks, usually two adversarial neural networks, or two different competing models, one generating and the other testing. It's been trained on the larger internet, so all the good and the bad. And while that's great, it's got really good information in it and really bad information in it, it's learned concepts. It's learned patterns. So if I ask, what's digital transformation? It's not a keyword search. It knows that that includes cybersecurity and analytics and data and all of these things. So you're able to have a conversation with it in that context. So when you take that capability and you focus it on your own information, you're already able to start doing even more when you're not using it to search the wider internet and you're disregarding the information that may not be correct. So as a service, what can this do for me? Well, it's really good at generation, and one of the big uses that we've had is creating synthetic data sets. I'm able to create a statistically representative example of a patient data set in any circumstance and have the tool, because it understands coding like ICD-9 and ICD-10 and SNOMED. It understands statistically correct demographics. And it's able to generate in a file structure through conversational instruction, through natural language, a fantastic data set. And if you've never tried to do that, it's a fun thing to start to do, to create a data set that's statistically correct. It's really great at reducing information, so risk assessments, looking at fraud detection, providing citizen support in situations. It's really good. Transmutation, great word. All it really means is translating one thing to another, so language translations. It can take all of your documents in French, and then you can have a conversation with those documents in English. Really good at taking old software languages and turning them into Java or .NET. These are things that the tool is really, really good at. Knowledge access, I think we've all started to play with that, and then lots of emergent behaviors. And when we break down these tools to focus on what can it do, and start with, rather than what problem can I use this AI to solve, you start with, what are the problems? What is it that I need to solve? Is it resource capacity? Is it being able to extend a small amount of resources across a larger population with more complex needs? These are the sorts of things that we're able to start doing with it. So an example of a model where you can extend your existing investment by using these services. So we call it the digital triplet or AI triplet. But if you think of all of the information that goes into patient care, let's go back to that oncology model. So this doesn't even have to be serving a clinician. You have all of your diagnostic, your clinical notes, perhaps your genomics data, all of the clinical trials and regulations and policies, and it's up to you as a human to put that together. In the case of a doctor, it's up to a doctor to be able to go back through clinical notes and diagnostics and diagnostic imaging to be able to put that together. But when you add this layer of generative AI, explainable AI on top, you're able to interrogate that data and have an expert advisor. It's not replacing a clinician. It's not replacing a human. But what it's doing is it's able to see patterns in information that are complex and hard to see and very costly to try to model something to do this in another way. A great example would be putting it on top of existing dashboards, putting it on top of existing combination of data and documents. You know, so there's lots right now. You may have heard of RAG models where you load your documents in and you can create a new document from your old documents. This goes further because you're looking at disparate data sources without having to invest in the modeling, because it's able to understand the documents and the context through fine-tuning. And it's an immediate value that we're seeing. So some of the areas where we're seeing this in Western Canada, using it for health system performance. So the question we had from the assistant deputy minister is, I'm off to a meeting with the deputy minister, and I have to call my assistant and get them to find out what's the attachment rate to primary care physicians in the rural areas. Of those, how many people have a chronic disease? Of those, how many are using, if they don't have a primary care physician, using emergency rooms or walk-in clinics, and what's the different cost of care? So he's got 10 people scrambling as he drives to his meeting to try to get the answers. Well, with the solution that's been developed, he can phone the data and he can have a conversation with it. And he can even go further to say, in 5 years, with the rate of population and the demographics, how is this likely to change? And you're able to start having conversations with your data. Another great example would be where we already have AI solutions to look at diagnostic imaging. So you'll find out this person has a brain bleed, but that's as far as that AI tells you. This gives you the so what. What's my next best action? Or I've got a 92-year-old patient. What non-surgical intervention might I have? For the public, if we go back to that use case we already have where the citizens are able to navigate their own clinical care in oncology, or their families are able to, it's able to provide more information in a way that they can have a conversation with the data. What clinical trial is the most appropriate? What are the risks of that clinical trial? When does it start? What are my obligations? With that solution, it has a live handoff to a nurse. Should they want to move the conversation, it keeps all of the information in the chart, so somebody can go back, the clinician can see that the person has been asking these questions. And that is an example of how we can start to use technology to support us in some really hard things to help give information back to decision makers. Okay, so the last thing I'll quickly go through, you may hear the term agentic AI. This is the hot topic. Last year when people asked me, where are we going next with technology, we talked about multimodal. Where we're going now is agentic AI. Agentic AI is simply taking a bunch of agents, remember those services, giving them different tasks. So you have a team, like your best team of assistants ever, going off. One might be retrieving the information, the second is fact-checking, the third is doing the calculations, the fourth is generating a chart to feed it back to you. And this is where the future is with these different tools. It's being able to bring the information together. The best use of this, back to making the information useful, is you can apply this to your responsible use of AI. You can have one agent doing the fact-checking, another one checking your security, a third one maybe de-identifying information, redacting information, and you can automate those processes. Going back to our information as water, how can I make this more useful? And this is where we're seeing these tools going, which are going to make this more trustworthy. So when we turn on the tap, we know we can trust the information we're receiving when we ask that. And that's really what's needed both in healthcare and in social care to get the answers to these questions from this vast amount of information that we've been investing in for decades. Okay, the human-agent partnership. If anyone asks me now, where is this going? There's a great quote from Picasso that says, computers are stupid, they can only answer questions. And to me, this is why AI is so useful. It's not replacing humans. We are nowhere near the point. My mother, who, when the library calls to tell her book's overdue and she apologizes to the robot profusely, it doesn't care. It's just a machine, right? It's this human agent partnership framework that really is where I think we're going to see in the next year. How can these technologies help us be creative? How can they help us ask the right questions? Because they're only there to answer. It's up to us as citizens, as patients, as clinicians, as researchers to ask the questions, to frame the questions, and up to the tools to give us those answers to those questions. So just for fun, I asked GPT what's coming next. I perfectly love how I'm going to look in the future. Can't see it, but I'm good. But I asked the question, and the answer was, it's up to us to evolve AI and get it to do the things that we don't want to do. I particularly like the washing the cat. I didn't know people wash cats. But it goes back to make the AI tools work for you. They are there to be able to support us so that we can do the things that make our lives valuable. And we heard some great talks today with Deborah, I don't know if you're here, who gave a talk this morning on the innovation stage. She's a citizen advocate, and she was explaining her lived journey. And it was about, I want it when it's useful for me. I would like the technology to support, I would like the ability to have it do something I want it to do and not replace the things that I feel I can do myself. It goes the same in our clinical worlds, it goes the same in our working worlds. Everybody will use the technology in a way that's going to make your work life and your work-life balance better. And that's how we need to evolve this technology and be able to support us in doing the things that we need to do. So, on this last one, I love that picture. AI is not ready to take our jobs yet. Maybe one day we'll all be lying on a beach and AI will be doing all the work. But we can develop these technologies to be fantastic interns and assistants to us. All right, so I think we might have just a minute or so, Tanny, for questions.
We do. Thank you very much. Thank you. When you asked people to put up their hands to say who hadn't used it, I did expect a few more hands to go up. And you talked about that change in the last 6 months. I mean, I remember talking to someone about AI maybe a year ago, and they went straight into it's going to be the Terminator, it's all quite, dark stuff. Do you think people are, because they're more exposed to it, they're becoming less afraid of it or less worried by the implications of it?
For the good and the bad. I think we all need to learn to be discerning humans. If you Google what's the best Italian restaurant in Birmingham, it's very unlikely you're going to take the one at the top. We go through the information and we find the answer that suits what we need. I think we need to be discerning in asking the question and then re-ask the question and have that conversation. But I do think people are getting more familiar. I like to think people are being discerning. Don't trust everything that comes out of it. Anyone that works with me knows I have a rule: I ask 3 times. I ask the question, I ask if it gave me a correct answer, and it'll usually correct itself. And then I ask a 3rd time, and I say, are these links real? Give me the URL. So that I'm getting it to test itself, which is a step towards. But I do think we're less afraid at what it's going to do. I think people are becoming more familiar with don't give your personal information to the public models. And there's a lot more access to the tools that are protected. How many here in the room, turn the lights up again, how many people have already had access to things like Copilot or GPT Enterprise? Is anyone not?
Wow.
All right, so there's your answer. These are tools that have been locked down for use in business.
Yep.
You still have to be discerning about the answer it gives you. I still do my 3 times question, and it always apologizes. But I'm so sorry. You're right. I wasn't quite correct on that. But I do think by having these tools in a scenario where it's locked down and you're using it for productivity at work, we are all getting better at using them.
I think it's for me when I use a search engine, I never take the top 3. I always have a bit of a look, maybe 2nd, 3rd page. I'm not sure how much further I go just to check it. And I know when I've used AI, it's usually been in a subject that I know really well to see if it gives me something different or, just to sense check.
Get it to ask it again. I ask it all the time, but don't be too sassy. I've got a good story where our founder, he's 75 years old, and he thinks all this AI stuff is crap. And he's told me it's crap. And I was showing him how to go through the prompts, how to ask it questions. And it came back with some answers. And he said, can it lie? So I typed it in, no, I have been programmed, I am AI, I cannot lie. And he said, get it to say something that's not true. And I put in, tell me something that's not true. It goes, Diane, everyone likes you all the time. And I'm like, oh. And then, of course, he said, oh, she doesn't like you.
So can you give us some advice for navigating some of the challenges out there?
Yeah, to me, the biggest challenge right now, particularly on the tools that are safe, that have been locked down in a secure enterprise, your prompts are not going back to the public model, it's still reliability. Being able to trust the answer. And that's why the #1 use of agentic AI that we started before it even had a name was to have that second agent doing the fact checking, you know, and giving us a quality score. Because as I've heard from executives, if I have to go and click every link on the references, it's not actually that helpful. But if I can give you a quality score and also use a second agent to make the first agent smarter, to me, that is the best use of agentic AI, and that's probably the most popular use that we're seeing.
Well, I mean, you talked a little bit about, you know, health service, and, you know, we're not quite sure what NHS England is going to look like. There's been lots of stuff reported in the media. It does feel like this is a moment in time. You know, we talk about waiting lists and issues, you know, getting to a GP appointment or to a dentist or something like that. This feels like it could be a moment in time to help that change what the NHS,
Well, and that's
you kind of hope it's
exactly
going to
it.
be.
When you focus these technology on a problem, you know, we always start with a problem. Start with what is it you're trying to solve? Whether it's the opioid crisis, is there a cohort of citizens we can make a difference by understanding the patterns of addiction? Is there wait list challenges that we can find alternative ways that we can solve that? And look outside the box. I know that there's a similar problem here. I heard it when we were chatting yesterday. There is such a huge crunch of resource shortages and capacity issues in the healthcare sector globally. And it's because 25 to 40% of us will be retiring in the next 10 years. And that's the group that need complex care. So looking at ways that we can do things differently and not replace ourselves, but how can we upskill people? How can we get information in the hands of the fewer people doing more work? And how can we enable ourselves through technology, like the BC Cancer example? The whole purpose for that was to stop people calling the nurses with, where do I park? You know, can my dad come to my appointment? Because the web pages are really complex. If you can enable people with quick answers to questions with the option for a live handoff to a nurse or an expert, you know, that's how we're going to start solving some of these problems. And I do think the time is right.
Yeah, and information's key, isn't it? So, I mean, what I take away, we've heard lots about sort of collaboration, you know, ambition, you know, data ethics, privacy, all that. But also, I've heard this from multiple people. It's what is the problem we're trying to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with a problem. And not all problems are AI problems. You know, sometimes it's a data integration problem. You know, to get an answer across different sectors, across social care, we've heard it a few times today, it's about bringing the data together. But there's a great use case for AI. How can it help us bring information together and integrate data and use the tool to increase your data quality? But the answer to the question is coming from the data being in one place.
Exciting times. Diane, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been a privilege to listen to you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's been here.
Thanks.
So that is now the end of this session. There's plenty more to do outside. Go and have a look at the exhibition. And we'll see you later, or the next time you're going to see me is for the Gala Dinner and Awards. So, yeah, have a great rest of the afternoon, and we'll see you a little bit later. Thank you.